My name is Lu Ji. I am young and successful. I started a decent-sized company of my own. People call me Lu Nyan. I hired a new secretary. Her name is Ran. She is beautiful. She doesn't say much. She's just a bit lazy. She shows up for work exactly on time, every day. She leaves the moment it's time to clock out. She won't stay for even a second longer. A quintessential salted fish corporate drone. Wei Dong, the company's sales manager, took a liking to her. He sends her flowers and breakfast every day. He's made sure everyone knows about it. I know what kind of person Wei Dong is. He came from the countryside. He has some talent. But his motives are never pure. He's always looking for a way to climb the social ladder. He thinks a beautiful and seemingly naive girl like Ran is his best stepping stone. At first, I was just watching the drama unfold. Occasionally, I'd even step in to bail Ran out of a situation. Until that day, Wei Dong burst into my office with a paternity test report. In front of everyone, he slammed it down on Ran's desk. He roared, "Ran, what else do you have to say for yourself? This child belongs to Lu Nyan." I was completely stunned, but I didn't expect that Ran would only slowly lift her head, glanced at the report, and then pick up her phone. She calmly dialed a number. "Hello, Uncle Wan. Yes, it's me. I'm bored of playing around. Acquire this company called Kihan Network." Within 10 minutes, and then, my worldview just shattered like that. My name is Lu Ji. I started my own company. It's not huge, about 100 employees. We're in the internet industry. People in the circle show me respect by calling me Lu Nyan. 3 months ago, I hired a new secretary. Ran. On the day of her interview, she was wearing a simple white shirt and jeans. She didn't have a stitch of makeup on. Her resume was unbelievably clean. It just said she graduated from XX University. When the HR manager handed me the resume, they suggested hesitantly, "This one. She has too little experience." At the time, I was having a headache dealing with several investors. Irritated, I waved my hand dismissively. "Just take her. She looks like she'd be quiet." And that's how it happened. Ran became my secretary. She was indeed quiet. Every morning at exactly 9 o'clock, she appeared at her workstation. Not a minute early. Not a minute late. After arriving, she would first make herself a cup of tea, then leisurely turn on her computer and start processing emails. Her work efficiency was very high. The tasks I assigned to her were always completed perfectly. No more, no less. But that was the extent of it. If you asked her to compile meeting minutes, she would definitely not make an extra PowerPoint presentation. If you asked her to book a conference room for Bod, Kang PM, she would never ask in advance if you needed tea or snacks prepared. She didn't have an ounce of initiative. As soon as it hit 6 o'clock, she shut down her computer faster than anyone. She'd grab that canvas bag that looked like it had been used for years and vanish on the dot. Vanish on the dot. There was one time at a company team building event. Everyone was partying in a KTV until midnight. Only she said at 9 o'clock that she was going home to sleep. The administrative manager leaned over to joke with me. "Lu Nyan, this secretary of yours ... is a textbook salted fish." I thought so too. A young girl with no career ambition, content with the status quo, probably just looking for a stable job to coast through her days. She was quite beautiful, though, the kind of beauty that was very clean. Her skin was fair. Her eyes were very bright. When she looked at people, it was like there was a layer of mist between them, making her seem a bit detached. Quite a few young men in the company were interested in her, but she treated everyone the same. Polite, but distant, until Wei Dong from the sales department appeared. Wei Dong was our company's top salesperson. He was sharp, smooth-talking, and socially savvy. He had studied his way out of the countryside, was incredibly hardworking, and was desperate to get ahead in the world. The way he looked at Ran was different. It was the look of a hunter spotting prey, full of calculated determination. He probably thought, a beautiful girl like Ran, who seemed to have no background, and appeared somewhat ethereal, was the perfect target. Winning her over would satisfy his desire for conquest without bringing any trouble. Thus began what I saw as a corporate mating ritual. Little did I know at the time that the direction this play would take would be so absurd. Wei Dong's pursuit began with a bouquet of roses. That morning, just as I walked into the office, I saw a large bouquet of red roses on Ayn Rand's desk, the kind of red that was a bit tacky. Ayn Rand hadn't arrived yet. Colleagues at the surrounding desks were all whispering, "Wow, who sent those? It must be Manager Wei. Who can't see what he's up to? That must be 99 roses. He's really going all out." I listened, secretly shaking my head. This kind of grand gesture might work on a young girl fresh out of school, but I felt it was a bit over the top. At exactly 9 o'clock, Ayn Rand arrived right on time. She saw the flowers. Her pace faltered for a moment. Her face remained expressionless. There was no delight, nor any shyness. She just stood there looking at them for a second, then walked around the flowers, and sat in her chair. Computer on. Tea made. Her movements were smooth as flowing water, as if those flowers were just an air humidifier. Wei Dong timed his entrance and strolled over from the sales department, carrying 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He placed a coffee on Ayn Rand's desk, and said with a brilliant smile, "Ayn Rand, good morning. Do you like the flowers? I passed the florist this morning, and thought they suited you perfectly." Now, that was a skillful thing to say. He didn't buy them intentionally. He just happened to pass by and thought they were a good fit. All the colleagues in the pantry were craning their necks to watch the show. Ayn Rand lifted her eyelids, glanced at him, and responded in a flat tone, "Thank you. I don't like roses. I'm allergic to pollen." Wei Dong's smile froze on his face. He stammered an apology. "Allergic? I'm so sorry then. I didn't know." Ayn Rand picked up her teacup, took a sip, and added without any emotion, "It's fine. I don't drink coffee. I only drink tea." The expression on Wei Dong's face became even more awkward. He stood there, looking a bit helpless. Having finished her sentence, Ayn Rand lowered her head to start reading emails, never looking at him again. Sitting in my office, behind the glass wall, I almost burst out laughing. This girl was interesting. She wasn't the green tea type who plays hard to get, nor was she the fierce woman who gives a stern rejection. She was simply stating the facts. "I don't like it. I'm allergic. I don't drink it." No emotion, no accusation. But it was more lethal than any heated rejection. Wei Dong clearly hadn't expected this. He gave a forced laugh, trying to find a way to save face. "Then what should we do with these flowers? It's a waste to throw them away." Without even lifting her head, Ayn Rand indifferently tossed out a line. "The front desk probably needs them." The girls at the front desk loved flowers and plants. Wei Dong's face turned various shades of red and white. In the end, he could only sheepishly clutch the bouquet, and, under the snickering gazes of his colleagues, take it to the front desk. I thought that would be the end of it. I didn't expect that during lunch, Wei Dong would come back, carrying his tray. He sat down directly opposite Ayn Rand, putting on a sincere front. "Ayn Rand, I was too impulsive this morning. I just think you're a wonderful person, and wanted to be friends." Ayn Rand was taking small bites of broccoli. She lifted her head, and asked back faintly, "Aren't we colleagues?" That one sentence choked Wei Dong once again. "Right? Isn't a colleague a type of friend? What other kind of friend do you want to be?" Sitting not far away, I looked at Wei Dong's frustrated face, and for the first time, I felt that my salted fish secretary might not truly be a salted fish. She was just too lazy to deal with boring people and things. Wei Dong's greatest strength, or perhaps his weakness, was his thick skin and his high opinion of himself. The failure of the rose incident did not make him back down. He probably thought Ayn Rand was testing him, that it was just a girl's reserve. So, his offensive became even more intense. From daily breakfast to afternoon tea, and then to a variety of small gifts, trending cakes, limited edition milk tea, handmade hairpins. They piled up in a corner of Ayn Rand's desk, growing into a larger and larger heat. And Rand's way of handling it was also simple. Anything that could be shared was given to her colleagues in the department. Anything that couldn't be shared was left exactly where it was, waiting for Wei Dong to come and take it away himself. She never touched them once. Thanks to Wei Dong, the entire administrative department saved a fortune on afternoon tea expenses. Everyone began to look forward to each day. I wonder what delicious treats Supervisor Wei will bring today. Wei Dong didn't mind this at all. In fact, he was even a little proud. He probably felt that his method of cultivating good favor would make Rand feel his sincerity and see how popular he was. Once, I overheard him bragging to other colleagues in the break room. Girls, you know, they're thin-skinned. She's too embarrassed to accept it in person. But look, she hasn't thrown my things away, has she? That means there's a chance. I was getting water at the time, and nearly spat it out. How on earth is this man's brain wired? She gave the food to her colleagues to eat. Yet in his mind, not throwing it away meant he had a shot. This level of delusional self-conviction is a talent in its own right. What truly made me feel disgusted with Wei Dong was something that happened last Friday. That afternoon, Rand got a call from home, saying there was an emergency. She needed to leave a bit early. She came to my office to ask for leave, and the first granted it. Not long after she left, a torrential downpour began. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the rain fall as if the sky had sprung a leak, feeling a bit worried about how she would get home. Just then, I saw Wei Dong holding an umbrella, charging into the rain. He ran to the roadside and hailed a taxi. Then he ran back to the front of the company building, seemingly waiting for Rand. About 10 minutes later, Rand appeared. She was holding a very ordinary transparent umbrella, walking at a steady, unhurried pace. Wei Dong immediately rushed to meet her, trying to lead her toward the taxi. I couldn't see their expressions clearly, nor could I hear what they were saying, but I could see Rand shaking her head repeatedly and trying to walk around him. Wei Dong was persistent. He even reached out to grab her arm, and Rand stopped in her tracks. She folded her umbrella, letting the heavy rain drench her. Then, she looked up and said something to Wei Dong. Wei Dong's expression froze instantly. Then, Rand walked past him to the curb on her own and reached out a hand. A black Rolls-Royce, appearing out of nowhere, pulled up silently in front of her. A driver in a suit, wearing white gloves, got out, respectfully opened the car door for her, and held a massive black umbrella over her head. Rand got into the car, and it drove away smoothly, leaving only Wei Dong, holding his umbrella, standing there like a complete idiot, looking like a total joke. And I, in my office on the 28th floor, was also stunned. I felt that my understanding of my secretary had, perhaps, always been a bit flawed. After the Rolls-Royce incident, rumors began to swirl around the company. Isn't Rand's family really rich? Doesn't look like it. Look at what she wears and uses. Everything is so ordinary. What was with that car then? What was with that car? It must have been a rental. Girls nowadays, there's nothing they won't do for the sake of appearances. Wei Dong was clearly a firm believer in this last viewpoint. Not only did he not back down, he became even more convinced of his theory. Rand was faking it. She was just an ordinary, vain girl. That luxury car was something she had deliberately rented to put on a show, just so she could reject him. In his mind, a melodramatic play was already unfolding, a poor girl holding on to her love, while a rich heir tested her with money. And he was the hero who would save her from her tribulations. I truly admired his imagination. Soon, his hero saves the beauty plan arrived. The company was recently negotiating with a major client. The person in charge of the other company was a notorious old lecher named Huan. This project happened to be handled by Wei Dong. On Wednesday afternoon, Wei Dong knocked on my office door and asked tentatively, "President Liu, for the dinner with Mr. Huan tonight, couldn't Rand come along too?" I frowned and immediately questioned him. What would she go for? She isn't in charge of sales. Wei Dong immediately put on a fawning smile. Mr. Huang specifically asked for a pretty female assistant to come and leaven up the atmosphere. You know how it is. With these kinds of social engagements, having a girl there makes the negotiation go much smoother. As your secretary, and Ran represents the company's image. She's the perfect choice. A wave of nausea hit me. Bringing a female colleague along just to leaven up the atmosphere for a client. That's something I could never do. I refused him directly. Find someone else. Or go by yourself. Wei Dong seemed to have expected me to say this. He sighed, and tried to persuade me with mock earnestness. I know you want to protect your subordinates, but this client is too important to us. If we lose them, next quarter's performance will look terrible. Don't worry, with me there. I definitely won't let Ran be mistreated. I just want her to see how hard I work for the company. To let her know that a man has to let his strength do the talking. That last sentence exposed his true motive. He wanted to put on a performance of resisting a pervert's advances and protecting a female colleague in front of Ran by demeaning others. He hoped to elevate himself. His tactics were incredibly clumsy. I looked at him, my tone turning cold. My secretary doesn't need to attend these kinds of dinners. Wei Dong, remember your position. And remember the company's rules. Wei Dong's expression shifted, but he finally nodded and withdrew. I thought that was the end of it, but I underestimated Wei Dong's initiative. Around 5 o'clock that afternoon, Ran came to deliver some documents. She set them down and asked as if in passing, President Liu, is there a dinner tonight? Supervisor Wei told me to get ready, saying that you were going as well. My heart sank. This Wei Dong. He actually dared to fabricate an order from me. I looked Ran in the eye and told her categorically, no. I didn't ask you to go. From now on, regarding things like this, no matter who notifies you, if it doesn't come directly from my mouth, you don't need to pay it any mind. Ran gave an O and nodded, her face showing no particular emotion. All right, President Liu. If there's nothing else, I'll be heading off work now. She turned and left. I watched her back, picked up my phone, and sent a message to Wei Dong. You are removed from the project. Hand it over to the assistant supervisor tomorrow. Then, I tossed my phone aside and rubbed my aching temples. I was starting to feel that Wei Dong wasn't just thick-skinned. He was stupid, and a stupid, arrogant person often does the most terrifying things. Being removed as the project lead was a significant blow to Wei Dong. He was listless for 2 days straight. For 2 days, he went about dejectedly, avoiding me whenever he saw me. I thought he finally knew how to restrain himself. As it turned out, I was still too naive. Friday afternoon, there was a sudden commotion downstairs. I was in the middle of a meeting, and the noise from outside was so disruptive that I told Ran to go see what was happening. Ran was gone for 2 minutes. Before returning, she reported with a somewhat strange expression, President Liu, Supervisor Wei, has set up heart-shaped candles downstairs. He's put up a banner, and it seems he's confessing his love to someone. Every executive in the conference room went silent. They all looked at me in unison. In my mind, a stampede of 10,000 alpacas was already charging past. I gritted my teeth and asked, to whom? Ran's gaze flickered for a moment, and she answered softly, what's written on the banner is my name. Our company's CTO, a balding man in his 40s, couldn't hold it back and spat out his water. I felt my blood pressure soar to a dangerous level. I rushed to the window and looked down. Good grief. In the plaza below the building, a massive heart had been laid out with red candles. In the center were the words Ran. Wei Dong stood in the middle of the heart, clutching a bouquet of roses even more gaudy than the last ones. He had a megaphone and was bellowing with deep passion. A large crowd of onlookers had gathered, pointing and whispering at our office building. The company's reputation, at this very moment, was being completely dragged through the mud by him. I roared at Ran, have security kick him out. Ran, however, was very calm. She glanced at her phone and reassured me. President Liu. Don't worry. The police should be arriving soon. I froze. The police. And Ran nodded, looking as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Yes. Someone is holding an illegal gathering in a public place. And using open flames at that. It's a fire hazard, and it's disrupting normal business operations. I just called the police. Her tone of voice was as casual as if she were saying she'd just ordered takeout. The conference room fell once again into a deathly silence. Everyone stared at and ran as if she were an alien. I looked at her calm, unruffled face, and suddenly felt that my previous assessment of her as quiet, or a slacker, was a massive misunderstanding. This girl's mind, she was simply not on the same wavelength as normal people. Her way of handling problems was simple, blunt, efficient, and completely legal. Sure enough, in less than 5 minutes, 2 police cars came roaring to the scene. Under the stunned gazes of the crowd, a few police officers walked over, exchanged a few cordial words with Wei Dong, and then took him, flowers and all, into the police car. That scene, don't even get me started on how comical it was. The giant heart-shaped candle arrangement downstairs was sprayed completely clean by the property management using fire extinguishers. A grand, passionate confession farce ended in such an extremely social death fashion. After the commotion settled, and Ran returned to my side, as if nothing had happened, she asked, "Shall we continue the meeting?" I looked at her, opened my mouth, but couldn't say a single word. I waved my hand and announced, "Meeting adjourned." The executives looked as if they had been granted a grand pardon, and they all scattered like startled birds. As they left, the look in everyone's eyes when they glanced at Ran was filled with awe and fear. Only Ran and I were left in the office. I weighed my words and asked cautiously, "Aren't you angry?" She looked back at me with a face full of sincerity and asked, "Why should I be angry? If a fly keeps buzzing in your ear, would you get angry at it?" Seeing that I was speechless, she added of her own accord, "You'd only think of a way to make it shut up." I was actually left without a retort. That afternoon, the police station called and asked the company to send someone to pick him up. I sent the administrative supervisor. I heard that, because Wei Dong had disturbed public order, he was given a verbal warning and a 500 yuan fine. But for someone who cared excessively about his reputation like him, this was more painful than killing him. He no longer had the face to stay at the company. The next day, I received his resignation letter. I thought this matter would end completely here, but I didn't expect that this was merely the beginning. A crazier, more absurd revenge was brewing. Wei Dong was gone, and the company became much quieter. The girls in the administrative department were a bit disappointed that they no longer got free afternoon tea, and Ran remained in her unshakable salted fish state, brewing tea at work and leaving right on time. It was as if that previous farce had absolutely nothing to do with her. I was also happy to have the peace, so I put the matter out of my mind. About a month later, that day, I was in my office discussing a contract with the legal department, and Ran knocked and entered. She announced, "There's a gentleman downstairs looking for you. He says his name is Wei Dong." I was stunned for a moment. What was he doing back here? I pondered for a moment and said, "Let him come up. Regardless of everything, we should at least meet once." 5 minutes later, Wei Dong appeared at my office door. He had grown thinner and darker, and there was an indescribable gloom in his eyes. He didn't look at me. His gaze was fixed intently on Ran beside me. That look made me very uncomfortable. I leaned back in my chair and asked coldly, "Is something the matter?" Wei Dong smiled suddenly, but that smile was a bit neurotic. From the briefcase he carried, he took out a document, walked straight up to Ran, and with a thud, slammed it onto her desk. He pointed at the document and roared, "Ran, what else do you have to say for yourself?" Ran was baffled by this sudden outburst. She lowered her head and glanced at the document. I also leaned over to look. At the very top of the document were several eye-catching large words: paternity test report, My brain went buzz. What on earth? Wei Dong pointed at the report, then pointed at me. His face a mix of anger and triumph. He bellowed. Stop pretending. I know everything. The child in your belly belongs to Lu Ji. You two have been having an affair for a long time. You played me for a fool. You used me as a backup. And ran. You're really something. His voice was very loud, and everyone in the entire office area heard it. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked toward us in unison. I was completely bewildered. Me and ran. And a child. Where was this even coming from? I hadn't even touched Ran's hand. And Ran's reaction was even calmer than mine. She picked up the so-called paternity test report and flipped through it leisurely. The report looked quite professional. It listed sample A and sample B. The conclusion stated that the probability of paternity was greater than Chin McGee Kai and Sihin McGee Chin Fin Taram, even at the source of sample A. It solemnly stated, extracted from a water cup used by Mr. Lu Ji. I was almost laughing from anger. I pointed at him and questioned in disbelief. Are you insane? Where did you get such a thing to slander me with? Wei Dong let out a cold laugh. Lu Ji dared to do it but not admit it. I felt something was wrong between you too long ago. If you weren't protecting her, how could a little girl who just graduated possibly call the police and get me thrown in the station? You two were in cahoots. This logic was truly impeccable. I was so angry I couldn't speak. Everyone's eyes were focused on Ran. Everyone was waiting for her reaction. Would she cry? Or would she angrily refute him? However, neither happened. Ran finished reading the report, placed it gently back on the desk, and then she looked up at Wei Dong. Her eyes filled with a kind of pity, as if she were looking at a jumping clown. She didn't speak. She simply picked up her phone and dialed a number. Her movements were very slow, very steady, without a hint of panic. The call went through, and Ran spoke softly into the receiver. Hello, Uncle Wan. It's me. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet office, everyone heard her clearly. I'm bored now. Acquire this company called Kihan Network. The one Lu Ji opened. Within 10 minutes. I don't want to see it anymore. And Ran hung up the phone. The whole world went silent. Completely silent. It was as if everyone had been hit by a pause button. Maintaining their original postures. Motionless. The triumph and madness on Wei Dong's face froze into an extremely ridiculous expression. His mouth was open, as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't produce a single syllable. As for me, I stood where I was, feeling as though something might be wrong with my hearing. What did she say? Acquire my company. Within 10 minutes. What kind of international joke was this? Kihong Network was founded by me single-handedly. The equity structure was crystal clear. 60% was in my own hands, and the rest belonged to a few partners and angel investors, who could just acquire it whenever they wanted. Even if there was to be an acquisition, that would be a long commercial negotiation process, due diligence, asset valuation, contract drafting. Which of those wouldn't take at least 10 days or 2 weeks? 10 minutes. Did she think she was playing Monopoly? I tried to make my voice sound a bit more steady, and said, Ran, don't make jokes like this. Ran ignored me. She just quietly looked at her phone screen, as if waiting for something. 2 minutes passed. The atmosphere in the office reached a peak of oppression. Sweat began to bead on Wei Dong's forehead. He seemed to realize that the development of things had exceeded his script. He shouted with forced bravado. You're just putting on a show. Who do you think you are, acquiring a company with just a phone call? Do you think you're the richest person in the world? Ran finally lifted her eyelids, gave him a glance, and responded flatly. I'm not. But my dad is. Wei Dong's mouth opened even wider. Just then, my phone began to ring frantically. It was the company's co-founder, Lao Zhang. I scrambled to pick up the call. On the other end, Lao Zhang's voice sounded like he wanted to eat someone alive. Lu Ji, are you crazy? Did you sell the company? I hurriedly shouted into the phone. I didn't. I didn't do anything. You still say you didn't. I just received an acquisition offer from Chong Capital, a 300% premium. Forced buyout of all our shares. The contract has already been sent to my email. Are you so damn desperate for money that you're cashing out with the brothers' shares? Cash out. Chong Capital. That name was like a bolt of lightning, striking the crown of my head. That was the top investment giant in the country. Its background was unfathomably deep. Rumor had it that its actual controller was perennially ranked in the top 3 of the global rich list. They'd wanted to acquire my tiny little company, and at a 300% premium. This wasn't called an acquisition. This was called charity. No. This was called a total wipeout. I still hadn't hung up the phone. The financial director and the technical director, their calls came in one after another. The content was more or less the same. Chong Capital, with an attitude that brooked no refusal. They used money to smash open the doors of Ha Hong Network. They didn't even give us any room for negotiation. The contract explicitly stated, either sign or completely disappear from the internet industry within 24 hours. This was a blatant threat. I gripped my phone, my palms drenched in cold sweat. I finally understood what Ayn Rand meant when she said buy it. It wasn't a joke. She wasn't kidding. She had simply made a phone call home, said she didn't want to play anymore. And then, the career I took such pride in. The company had struggled for nearly 10 years to build. Changed hands in less than 10 minutes. Its owner had changed. I looked up at Ayn Rand. She still had that calm and composed look, as if she had only done something trivial. As for Wei Dong, he was completely dumbfounded. His face was deathly pale. His lips trembled, and he looked at Ayn Rand as if he were seeing a ghost. He muttered to himself, "Impossible. Ayn Rand stood up and walked over to him. She looked down at him, her voice very soft, yet it struck Wei Dong's heart like a heavy sledgehammer. Now, do you still think I need to collude with Lu Nian just to get you into a police station?" Wei Dong's legs gave way, and he slumped onto the floor. Wei Dong was escorted out by security. When he left, he was completely despondent, still incessantly muttering impossible under his breath. Inside the office, an eerie silence returned. All the employees kept their heads down, pretending to be busy. But in reality, everyone's ears were pricked up like antennas. My partners had already rushed into my office. "Old Lu, what on earth is going on? What happened?" Chong Capital. Chong Capital. Who did we offend?" I looked at their anxious faces, then looked back at the calm and composed secretary at the workstation outside. It felt like I was dreaming. I waved my hand, signaling for them to leave first. I said to them in a dry voice, "I'll handle it." After they left, I closed the office door, then walked over to Ayn Rand. What should I say? Ask her who she really was. Ask her why she came to work as my secretary. Ask her if everything that just happened was real. 1,000 words were stuck in my throat. In the end, they only turned into one sentence. I walked up to Ayn Rand and asked, feeling ridiculous myself, "That appraisal report? It's fake." Ayn Rand looked up, gazed at me, and suddenly smiled. This was the first time I had ever seen her smile. It was very beautiful. She responded softly, "I know." She interrupted my words and began calculating to herself, forging an appraisal report, slandering others, and causing significant reputational and financial loss to the company. Adding these charges together, it's enough to keep him inside for a few years. I felt a chill run down my spine. This girl was too ruthless. She never had any intention of letting Wei Dong go. From beginning to end, she had been like an outsider, calmly watching Wei Dong jump around, waiting for him to play all his cards, to make enough mistakes, and then, delivering the fatal blow. She looked at me, a hint of apology in her eyes, as she continued, "As for the company, I'm sorry, Lu Nian, for causing you trouble. The acquisition contract, you can sign it, or you can choose not to. If you don't sign, Chan will inject capital tomorrow to help you crush all your competitors. If you do sign, the money will be in your account immediately. Whatever you want to do in the future, you'll be free. Listening to her words, I felt things were getting even more surreal. What do you call this? A slap followed by a sweet date? This wasn't a sweet date. This was a mountain of gold. A 300% premium. The net worth of us founders had directly multiplied several times over. We had achieved financial freedom in an instant, and the price was merely losing a company I had built with my own hands. But looking at it now, this so-called company I founded was, in their eyes, nothing more than a toy. I took a deep breath and asked, "Can I ask one question? Who exactly are you?" And Ran thought for a moment and answered very seriously, "My father is in Changshan." For details, you can search for it yourself. And Changshan, that name, I seem to have heard it somewhere before. I took out my phone, my hands trembling, and typed those 3 characters into the search bar. The first encyclopedia entry that popped up almost made me drop my phone. And Changshan, founder and chairman of Changshan Capital, richest man in Asia, ranked second on the global rich list. Number 1 was an oil prince from a Middle Eastern country, not purely a businessman. So, in a sense, she was the daughter of the world's richest man. Looking at the person before me, wearing a 100 yuan white shirt, using a 200 yuan canvas bag, that slacker secretary who went home to sleep on the dot every day, my worldview, at this moment, shattered into pieces. That afternoon, I ultimately signed the acquisition contract. I had a choice. I had no choice. What Ran gave me was an offer I couldn't refuse. The speed at which the money arrived was even faster than I imagined. When I saw the long string of zeros in the text message on my phone, I didn't feel excitement, only a deep sense of emptiness. 10 years of struggle, countless all-nighters, countless drinks that ruined my stomach, everything I had exchanged for all that, in her eyes, was just a matter of snapping her fingers. The company's employees soon received the notification as well. The company had been fully acquired by Changshan Capital. Everyone's positions remained unchanged, but their salaries were doubled. The entire company, in an instant, went from dead silence to a notion of joy. Everyone was cheering, celebrating that they had become employees of a top-tier capital firm overnight. Only I felt like an outsider, and Ran should be called Miss, and now she could no longer be considered my secretary. In a sense, I was now her employee. She walked up to me and handed me a piece of paper. "Lunayan, this is my resignation letter." I took the paper, unable to help a bitter laugh. "You're still calling me Lunayan?" She shrugged. "I'm used to it. What are your plans for the future?" I answered honestly, "I don't know. Maybe I'll go traveling first." She nodded. "That's good. Get some relaxation." After she finished speaking, she prepared to leave. I called out to her, "Wait." I looked at her and asked the biggest question in my heart. "I still don't understand. Why did you come to work here? With her status, where couldn't she go? Why did she pick my small, obscure company to be a secretary earning 8,000 yuan a month?" And Ran was silent for a moment before she slowly spoke. "My dad thought I was too lazy, that I had no ambition. He forced me out to experience life. If I could stay at a company for 3 months without being fired, he'd allow me to continue lying around at home." I was speechless once again. She looked at me and added with a face full of sincerity, "I picked the one closest to home, where the boss looked like he had a pretty good temper. A company that probably wouldn't fire employees on a whim. As it turns out, I have good eyes. So, the reason I was chosen was because I was close to home and had a good temper. This reason truly was simple and unadorned." I still couldn't help asking, when mentioning Wei Dong, and Ran's tone was very flat, Uncle Wang has already handed the evidence over to the police. Commercial defamation, forgery of documents, and some other not so clean things he did at the company before. The chain of evidence is complete. It'll be more than he can handle. I shuddered. That man called Uncle Juan must have been the driver who drove for her that day. Someone who could mobilize Chongchong capital at will and gather all the evidence in such a short time. This Uncle Juan was probably not just a simple driver. Behind and ran was a vast and sophisticated machine that I couldn't even begin to imagine. And Wei Don, that pitiful flight, had smashed right into it. Being crushed to pieces was his only possible end, and ran left, just as she had come, quietly, without taking even a wisp of a cloud, other than leaving me with a company that had been acquired, and a sum of money I couldn't spend in a lifetime. I sat in my office for a long time, from the afternoon until it grew dark. All the company's employees had gone. I was the only one left on the entire floor. I watched the heavy traffic outside the window, and for the first time, I felt lost about my future. I felt utterly dazed. Before, my goals were clear. Expand the company, take it public, and become a man at the top of the social ladder. Now, those goals had been achieved ahead of schedule, in a way I couldn't understand. I didn't even know if this could be considered success. Just as I was lost in thought, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I picked up. Hello? On the other end of the line was the voice of a middle-aged man, very respectful, but carrying an undeniable aura of authority. Is this Mr. Liu? Hello. I am Mr. N Changshan's assistant, Wang Zheng. Mr. N would like to invite you for afternoon tea. I wonder if it is convenient for you now. Wang Zheng. He must be the Uncle Wang that Ran mentioned. And Changshan, the richest man in the world. He wanted to have afternoon tea with me. I felt my heart skip a beat. I responded almost stuttering. All right. The car is already downstairs at your office. A black honky Lan. The license plate is Beijing A. I walked to the window. Sure enough, an extremely eye-catching black sedan was parked downstairs. That car, I had only ever seen it in the news. 15 minutes later, I was sitting in the back seat of the honky. The interior was spacious and very quiet, with almost no sound from the outside reaching in. The driver was indeed the one who had driven for and ran that day, Wang Zheng. He glanced at me through the rearview mirror, gave a slight smile, and said reassuringly, "Don't be nervous. Mr. N just wants to have a chat with you." How could I not be nervous? That was in Changshan. The car didn't head to any luxury hotel in the CBD. Instead, it drove into a seemingly ordinary courtyard house. At the entrance were two guards in Zhongshan suits. Upon seeing the license plate, they immediately stood at attention and saluted, then opened the large gates. The car stopped in the courtyard. Wang Zheng pulled the door open for me. "Mr. Liu, please." I followed him, crossing the courtyard and entering a study filled with antique charm. A man wearing a gray tang suit, with slightly graying hair, but a spirited and energetic demeanor, was sitting at a tea table, focused intently on brewing tea. He didn't look up, but a powerful aura had already come washing over me. It came rushing at my face. This was in Changshan. He finally spoke, softly uttering a single word. "Sit." I sat down opposite him, feeling stiff and constrained. He pushed a cup of brewed tea in front of me. The fragrance of the tea filled the air. This year's Minkian Longjing. I picked up the teacup and took a cautious sip. To be honest, I couldn't taste anything at all. My mind was a complete blank. And Changshan spoke slowly. "My daughter has caused you some trouble." I hurriedly waved my hands. "No. Missin is very good." And Changshan smiled. "That child. She's had this temperament since she was little, lazy, and hates trouble. But if anyone makes her feel troubled, her way of handling it will make things even more troublesome for them." Those words were the most precise summary of Ran's character I'd ever heard. He looked at me, and the conversation shifted. "That young man named Wei Dong. I already know about him. You handled it well, not letting him have his way." I was startled. He even knew about that. I replied humbly, I only did what needed to be done. And Chanshan nodded, appearing somewhat satisfied with my answer. He set down his teacup and finally got to the main point. Regarding Kihong Network, I will send a new CEO there. I am giving you two choices. I held my breath. First, take the money and do what you want to do. Chanshan Capital will be your most steadfast friend from now on. He looked into my eyes and said word for word. Second, stay and be the head of Chanshan Capital's internet industry in the China region. The second choice Chanshan gave was like a bomb, exploding in my head. Head of Chanshan Capital's internet industry in China. What kind of position was that? Let's put it this way. Nearly every big-name internet company in the country has, more or less, shares held by Chanshan. Becoming this person in charge was equivalent to stepping into the very center of power in China's internet circle, from being the boss of a 100-person company to suddenly becoming the operator of hundreds of billions in capital. That leap was faster than a rocket. No ambitious person could possibly refuse such a temptation. I looked at Chanshan. His eyes were calm, like a bottomless lake. Was he testing me? Or did he truly think I had the ability? I didn't know. All I knew was that if I chose the second path, my life would be completely tied to the name and ran. I would become a top general under her father. I would possess supreme power and wealth, but at the same time, I would lose certain things. For example, freedom. For example, that last bit of ridiculous dignity I held as a man. I would forever live under the label of being mentored by Ayn Rand's father. In my mind, scenes from the past 3 months flashed by. Ayn Rand quietly brewing tea at her workstation. Her expressionless face as she sent roses to the front desk. The way she calmly called the police and watched Wei Dong being taken away. Her leaning back in the seat of the Rolls-Royce, looking like a princess. I suddenly realized that she and I were never from the same world. Forcing my way in would only make me lose myself. I took a deep breath and made my decision. I looked at him, trying my best to keep my voice steady, and replied solemnly, Mr. An, thank you for your kindness. I choose the first option. On Chanshan's face, there wasn't the slightest bit of surprise. It seemed he had expected my answer all along. He even showed a slight smile of approval. He pressed further. Have you thought it through? I nodded with certainty. I have. I'm probably not cut out to be a professional manager. I still prefer doing my own small things. And Chanshan nodded approvingly. Good. You have spirit. He stood up, walked to the bookshelf, took out a wooden box, and handed it to me. This is for you. I opened it and saw a seal inside. Wang Zheng explained respectfully from the side. This is a token of friendship from Chanshan Capital. By holding this seal, anywhere in the world, you can unconditionally utilize up to $1 million worth of Chanshan Capital's resources. No reason or collateral required. My hand trembled. $100 million. This wasn't just a friend anymore. This was a benefactor for life. Mr. An, this is too precious. I can't. And Chanshan waved his hand dismissively. Take it. Consider it An apology from that girl, and ran. She played around and made your company vanish. His tone carried a hint of teasing. What else could I say? I could only accept it. That day, I don't know how I walked out of that courtyard house. I only remember that when I sat back in that honky car, Wang Zheng said to me meaningfully, Mr. Liu, you made a wise choice. What the master admires most is a person who knows exactly where they stand. I watched the street scenery receding rapidly outside the window, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Yes, knowing where one stands, perhaps, that is the only correct way for an ordinary person like me to survive when facing an existence like theirs. In the end, I did go traveling. The money from selling the company, combined with the friendship token from Chanshan, meant I no longer had any worries for the future. I went to many places. Places I wanted to go before but never had the time for. I saw the brightest starry sky in Tibet, chase the most beautiful aurora in Iceland, and on the African savanna. I watched the animal migration. My heart slowly began to settle. Everything about Kihon Network, about Enran, and about that bizarre experience slowly settled down, turning into a story. Occasionally, I would see news of Incheon and Cheongshan Capital in the financial section. Every time, it made me feel that their world was so incredibly far away from mine. 1 year later, I returned to this familiar city. I used part of the money to invest in a few promising startup teams. I didn't participate in the operations, choosing instead to be a hands-off investor. With the rest of my time, I read books, working out, learning to cook for myself. Life is mundane and free. One day, I was wandering through a newly opened, top-tier shopping mall in the city center. This mall was named the Minsheng Ansheng Global Center. It was named the Ansheng Huanju Center. When it opened, the news was filled with overwhelming reports about it. It was said to be a coming-of-age gift from Incheon to his daughter. I walked into the mall, looking at the extremely luxurious interior and the wide array of luxury goods. I couldn't help but smile faintly. That girl in the white shirt, who drank plain water, would she like a place like this? I took the escalator, going up floor by floor. On the top floor of the mall was a massive sky garden. I walked in, wanting to get some fresh air. Then, I saw a familiar figure, and ran. She was wearing a tracksuit, with headphones on, sitting on a bench, engrossed in a mobile game. Beside her stood the familiar Uncle Wong. Uncle Wong saw me too. He gave me a small smile and a nod. I hesitated for a moment, but I still walked over and took the initiative to say hello. Long time no see. And Ran looked up. When she saw me, she was stunned for a second. Then she also smiled. Long time no see, Lu Nyan. She was still used to calling me that. I quickly waved my hand. Don't call me Lu Nyan anymore. I'm just a jobless wanderer now, she said softly. That's quite go. Freedom. The two of us, for a moment, didn't know what to say. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. I still couldn't help myself. I pointed at this massive mall and asked tentatively, Are you managing this place now? And Ran shook her head, casually putting her phone away. My dad insisted I come to work, so I'm just holding a nominal position here. What position? At Ansheng Global Center, Chief Security Consultant. I looked at her I'm just here to slack off expression, then looked not far behind her, at those men in black suits, wearing earpieces, who clearly weren't ordinary security guards. Chief Security Consultant. It sounds like my previous position as CEO of Kihon Networks isn't much different. To put it bluntly, we're both just in our family businesses. Serving as a head of security, I was suddenly struck by a sense of relief. I looked at her and laughed from the bottom of my heart. That's pretty good. Security captain. Sounds much more impressive than a jobless wanderer like me. And Ran also laughed, her eyes curving into crescent moons. At that moment, the sunlight was just right. The breeze was pleasant. I suddenly felt that knowing her didn't seem like a bad thing after all. At least, she made me understand one thing. In this world, some people are born in Rome, while for us ordinary people, all we can do is stay on our own path and run as hard as we can. As for where the finish line is, perhaps it isn't that important anymore.